YouTube channel or like that?
So it's under, I think Steve Conger, you could find it, but it's also, if you go to the syllabus in Canvas, there's a link right too. And they're broken up into playlists, which is kind of, I'm not sure anybody would do this as a playlist, but like all of the 220s are in one playlist and all the 110s are in another playlist. But if you go to the syllabus right at the very top, where it's gives basically, I think, Seattle Central, and then it gives the blog, and then it gives YouTube's. Okay, so we are recording. What I'm going to do is bring up Visio again. Now, as I said, Visio, I have a love-hate relationship with it. And we want the crow's feet, if you can find it, the crow's feet database notation. As I said, there are other ways to do database notation, but this is probably the most common. And again, let me get the magnifier. Metric units or US units, doesn't matter. They don't even show up on the diagram unless you go into options. For this kind of diagram, we're not tying it to units. Like if you're doing arc something, it would matter, how you were measuring it. These don't. That's taking a while. Why is that taking so long?
It does take a while.
Actually, I'm used to it being pretty instantaneous. I'm not sure why it's taking so long.
You should CrossFit?
Yeah, CrossFit, database CrossFit.
You're in
Your code basic.
Oh, basic diagram. Thank you. I thought it was a CrossFit. Let me look.
You can search for it.
I thought I did the CrossFit. Yeah, it's here. I thought I did that. Huh.
So
I think what it was doing, probably the basic one, it hadn't rendered the tool set yet. So it was probably doing that. And this is all here. I may not zoom at all once we get going. We did an entity last time, and I might do one real quickly, just do it, but I primarily want to start talking about how they relate to each other. And then I thought we would kind of build a simple relational diagram and talk it through, and then I think I might let you guys do one just for practice. And then we'll talk a little bit about refining it. The refining talk might, I don't know if we'll get to it today or not. I keep spinning. But I
Could you
think
go
I
over
can.
the titles and the subcategories after that? You're covering.
So I'm going to talk about, we'll kind of review what we did with an entity, and then I'm going to talk about the relationships.
Okay.
And then I said we might do a practice for that. It'd be an ungraded practice, but just something to get, so I don't talk the whole time and gives you some hands-on. Is that ever going to stop spinning?
And then the primary key,
Well, we'll worry about that in a minute.
you said both though?
Well, I'm going to talk about relationships. So primary key is a part of that. All right, so I'm making this big, but the toolbox is not big. Do you need it big too? If I do that, I have to zoom or change my resolution. Any preferences? I can zoom off and on, but it'll drive you crazy. So the first thing I'll do is I'll bring on an entity, and we'll just review that real quickly. So basically an entity is just a box, right? We put the name at the top of the box. Do we want to do customer again, or do you guys have something else? So I'll do customer. You need to give it, this is the primary key, right? Every entity and ultimately every table should have a primary key. That being said, it'll work without one, but it should have one. Right? And what is a primary key? Does anybody remember?
Unique identifier.
It's a unique identifier. It can be anything. There's actually, as I said, there's a couple of different kinds of primary keys. So right now I'm going to kind of just fake it and just say customer key. But let me, and I'll do this as kind of a note to the side. I'll go find a text box. All right, so there's probably three different kinds of primary keys. There's actually maybe more than that. There's natural keys. Anybody have an idea what that would be? Just to talk about primary keys a little bit.
Did you say that you doing
So this is an entity. This is an entity, and this is just notes.
seconds?
It's just, yeah, so this is just side notes. Yeah.
Would it be like your email or your name?
It could be like your email. It could be, although names are usually really terrible keys, it could be like your name. It could be your zip code. There's things that belong to, again, zip code's not a really good idea either because it's, you need something that never repeats.
Where did you get that from? Where'd you get that?
I just went up to text. So if you want, I can zoom up here. There's a text box. So a natural key is a key that belongs to the data. An email account, is actually a very good point. It could be a combination of the name or something. Also, you could in some ways argue that like a social security number or student key, student ID is a natural key because they're kind of given to you, they're part of the data. Does that make sense? The drawbacks of natural keys are it is really, really hard to find something guaranteed to be unique. Emails are pretty good, but there are people that share emails. If that doesn't matter, like a pizza place, they usually use your phone number. A lot of people in the household could have the same phone number, but it doesn't matter because it's the household that needs to be unique for them. They don't care about the individuals in it. And more often, like we don't have a phone anymore. We just have cell phones. So natural keys, the problem is keeping them unique. The other problem with them is that they tend to be more volatile, meaning that they have to change. People change their email, they change their phone number, change things, and it's really a pain to change a primary key after the fact. Okay, the other one is, and I just lost the word that I want. I'll tell you what in fact it tends to be. There's a word for it though, there's a technical word. There should be auto number. You can't type. I'll think in a minute what the name of that is. But one of the things is just to randomly give, I know what it is, surrogate key. A surrogate key is a key where you just randomly assign a number, or sometimes something like a GUID, those things you use to, like when you buy new software and you have to enter that big long set of letters and numbers, that would work also. But the basic idea is you just randomly assign a value to every row. And it has some disadvantages. One disadvantage is that there's nothing implicit in an auto number that keeps you from repeating the same data over and over again, because the number will be different each time. So it doesn't keep you from accidentally repeating information in the table. There are other ways to help prevent that. But if you read online, the surrogate key is the way most people go. It has some other disadvantages. It can be a real pain if you're blending databases with surrogate keys. So say you had one database over here and one, and you want to blend the data. They both have surrogate keys. That means that there's going to be conflicts everywhere, and it makes it a real painful process to do that kind of blend. The advantages of it, though, these don't have any business meaning whatsoever. They're just there to link things, and so they never have to change, even if your business rules and concepts change. They're always unique. It's really easy to make them unique. You know, so surrogate keys are very common. And actually, if you ever do look at my book, I advocated natural keys there, but since I've changed to where I do everything with a surrogate key. Yeah.
Is the surrogate key the same as an auto number? Or
It can be, it's usually an auto number, but it doesn't have to be. It could be a randomly generated set of letters or something. But it's usually auto number, yeah. In MySQL and SQL Server, you can, both of them have means of auto. It's turning on auto numbering with a key. There's sometimes with a natural key, you can get a complete unique key by doing a composite key. Does anybody know what a composite key is? I'm not assuming you know, I'm just asking. Yeah. Right, sometimes you can define 2 or 3 fields to make a single unique key. For instance, in our schedules, there's a quarter, all right? That can't be unique because it's happens 4 times a year. There's an item number which theoretically could be unique, except that they reuse them every quarter. So those 2 are not. But if you bring the 3 item number, quarter, and year, you do have a unique combination, right? So that would be a composite key if you made all of these part of the primary key. The thing that's confusing about composite keys, this is one key. It has 3 fields, but it's one key. No table can have more than one primary key, right? But the primary key can consist of more than one column. Does that make sense? These are really awkward if you do composite keys. Yeah.
Try to make sense of it all. So you're speaking of the customer key, and that is the security database. That's for securing the database within the.
It actually has nothing to do with security. It's just for.
Did I miss a big huge section? Because I'm not. I was here last time when you pulled this up that you didn't thoroughly explain. So.
I didn't explain the types of keys last time.
What are the keys for?
To uniquely identify each row and to link things together.
Unique identifier. Okay.
Yeah, that's all they are, is unique identifier.
Okay.
And the reason you do a unique identifier, as you're going to see today when we start working with things, is that all the customer information will be in customer. You don't repeat anything about that customer when you do a sale. The only thing you repeat is the key.
All right.
Right? So you never have to type their name more than once. Yeah.
So the composite key, is that combined on the fly logically, so that new records created, it pulls it and therefore you have that label?
So one of the things that people think, databases generally don't pull or do anything. You have to do it. It'll be up to you to keep the key together. One of the huge disadvantages of a composite key is that as a foreign key, you have to repeat all 3 of these fields. It will tell you, the one thing it will do, it won't pull anything, but it will tell you if you enter only item number, a quarter, that it's not a valid relationship. Does that make sense? It'll tell you that it's not valid, but it won't actually, they never pull for foreign keys. You have to enter them.
So it's not a feature, you have to create that.
You have to create it, yes. There's a lot of things, although if you think about it, it would be really hard for the computer to know, on a lot of these things. There's a couple of other things I'll mention. They're not super important. Most keys are natural or surrogate. So natural is if it actually belongs to the data. Surrogate is just if you auto number it. Mostly I'll just auto number things. I think it actually works better in the long run. There's also what they call candidate key. And really, I don't care if you know candidate keys. Candidate keys are just things in your data that might work as a primary key. And when you're looking at the data, what might make a primary key? That's what a candidate key is. So it's not that important. There's also a thing called alternate keys, which is also not that important. That's if you have a unique field inside the data, inside the entity that is not the key field. Like, you don't want the social security number as a key field because it violates all sorts of laws to be using it that way. But you might have the social security number as a field inside the table. We could even put that. That would be unique, but it wouldn't be the key field because of legal reasons primarily, right? Almost everybody. One of the problems with the Social Security field is that, again, all of your information is tied to it, and everybody for 40 years was using that as a primary key in these databases. The trouble with that is that any hack automatically exposed, the primary key. And a lot of people weren't all that good at hiding it. Okay, so a couple other things, and then we'll get to the relationships. So I typically, let's just do a couple of attributes here. Again, what are attributes? Column names, yeah. They're the headings on the rows. And when you're doing the design, you're just thinking about the headings, the captions, not the content of the data, right? Does that make sense? The rows, I'll show you when we make it. This would be, if we were to do this, make this customer entity, if we were to make it into a table, inside the table, the table is essentially a two-dimensional grid, right? And then you have the heading. So this would be customer key. And in the entity, that's all you have is the word customer key. Down here, you might have one. Customer name, last name. And we'll just do Jones. Does that make sense? And then you have your next field. The entity is only concerned with this part. What are the column names? So when you're designing it, you're designing what the grid looks like in terms of what the headings are. Right? All right. Now I broke up. Oh, shoot. I hate. Can I get that? I want to get it to drag. I want that to drag. Okay. It's not that important, I guess, but kind of drives me nuts there. Okay, that's not good either. I think actually that's a text box. Let's bring an attribute in there. Oh well, screw it. As I told you, I have a love-hate relationship with Visio. When you're trying to make these look nice and everything. So a couple other things that we did last time. So basically all you'll have in here are the the column headings. The other thing that you can do, and it's not a bad idea to do in the design phase, is if you, let me zoom for that. If you select it and then right click on it, you have some options. You can set the primary key, you can set the foreign key, or you can set it as required. And it's not bad to set required. Like you could, and I'll make the last name required. And what the required does in the diagram is that they're bold, and the ones that are optional are not bold. Okay. Does that make sense? That's an entity. The tricky part with entities is to figure out what all the columns are, right? What are all the columns that belong to customer? That's the tricky part. It's not a hard thing to draw. It's not a hard, there's not a lot of complexity in the entity itself other than getting what you want, all the columns that you want in there. One thing I did is I broke out last name and first name, and I usually do separate out a name into first, last, and if you need middle initial. I usually break addresses because you could have, it's actually perfectly okay to have just a name field. But you can only search for what you have as fields, right? So if you want to search just for their last name, if you have a name field, you can't do that. You have to search for their full name every time. If you wanted to search for their address and you have just an address field and you type in the whole address, then you can't search for like zip codes. You can't search for like city names. Or you can, but it involves programming because you have to do some string parsing. So basically you want to break it into as many discrete fields as you think you would ever search for. Does that make sense? So last name, first name. In the address, you'd probably break it up into probably 2 address fields, and then city, state, zip, and anything else you want. It doesn't have to be zip. It could be postal code if you want a broader, particularly if you're dealing with people in Canada or Europe or something. Questions on that so far? Okay, so let's talk about the kinds of relationships, which probably sounds complicated, but it's not terrible. I'm going to just drag this. I guess I should have not unzoomed quite yet. Let's go over here. There's different. Notice there's a single relationship line, but it can be morphed into different kinds of relationships. So I'm just going to drag this on here, and I'm just going to talk about them, and I'll give some examples. Do I want to leave this zoomed? Maybe. So this is a basic relationship, and it doesn't have to be broken. It doesn't have to be an elbow like that. It could be a straight line. Getting these to be a straight line can be difficult sometimes. This is called the crow's foot, right? And that basically means many, 0 or many, right? This means that there is 1. Not only, it could be 0 and 1, or it's just in case it means there absolutely has to be 1 on this side, and there can be 0 or infinite number on this side. Does that make sense? So this is the normal relationship in relational databases. 90% of your tables will have this relationship. And when they don't, a lot of times you have to make it. So let's give an example or two of one-to-many. One of the things I hate about here is if you go to the text tool, you have to manually go back to the pointer tool. Otherwise, everything you do will be a text box. So let's do two like entities. And I'm not going to put a lot of fields in the entities because right now I'm just interested in the relationship. So let's do this as employee. And we'll just do this as employee key. And that's all I really want for now. And we'll do this as department. I will zoom this down because it's hard to get this on screen. And I'll do this as department key.
I'm a little lost. If you can show me how you got the employee and department key.
So I think you have the wrong template.
I don't.
So go to, we don't want Spencer, we want Paula.
Okay.
No, what we want is Sabine. And what we want is, no, we want CrossFit location. And then create. And then if you open up the shapes, it should have some. What are the shapes? Shapes there. So it should be all right. Let's do. Open stencils. So let's look at this. This has a flowchart. Software database, CrossFit. Don't have all the info. Just click it in and it should say.
Okay. Thank you.
I can see why you were lost if those were gone. I don't know why they were gone. So I'm going to zoom down. What is what do you think would be the one side of this? Department and employee. The way you think about a one-to-many is that you could say like one cookie contains many chocolate chips. You know, one class contains many students. So what would the one side be, do you think? Yeah, so department would be the one side. So what you'd want to do, and I'm going to, while this is selected, I am going to format shape. And if you want, I guess I should zoom this. So in the format shape, I'm going to format the line. I'm going to make my line look a little bigger. I'm going to make them colossal. And then I'll zoom down. Colossal is probably too big. Let's make it extra large. Or jumbo. Jumbo should be good. What's not working?
Are you with the wrong?
Did you have your text? And then right, once it's selected, you right click it. And new format shape. And then line. Again, you don't have to do this. I just want it to be visible where the connectors go. And they're not right away connecting. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to connect this to this. And it actually works best if like the whole border turns green like that. So this is the one side. It's connected to department is one. For every department, for every one department, there can be, and I'm taking this side and I'm going to connect it over here. for every one department, there can be many employees. And the way that you do this too, so in here, you would have to do like department key, okay? And department key is the foreign key that ties it to department, right? So let me, so if I click on that and select it, you can set foreign key. And foreign key is a department, you know, here's the primary key. It only can occur once. Here it can occur for as many employees as are part of that department.
So say we had another entity called like product.
Okay.
And it was attached to department. Would we put product key in department?
No, it wouldn't, because you'd assume there'd be more than one product per department, right? So it'd probably be, or maybe product sounds a little weird to me, but you might have, trying to think of the, each department might have several different programs. I'm trying to think of, my brain is fuzzy today.
But yeah, but you always put the
You always put
entity
the
key or whatever in the
mini side.
okay.
Right. It's always on the mini side. Primary key is the one side. Foreign key is the mini side. All right, one department, and let me kind of illustrate these as I go on. I don't know if I should do this, but let's see. Is access on here? It is. I hate access, but I can illustrate things a little bit with that. So if I did let me zoom. If I create a table, and let's just name this table department. Oh, come on.
It's just at the bottom, you can't read it.
Oh. Yeah, I don't agree with it. All right. It was off screen. So I'm going to change this. We'll call this department key. Notice that access makes them automatically auto numbers. You don't have to, but that's what it does. And I'll just have one other thing, department name. Okay, and that'll be, short text is okay. So I will save that. And then I'm going to do the other table. So add another table, create table. I haven't used access in years. Let's go to design. We'll call it employee. And we'll call this employee ID or employee key. And we'll call it, we'll just put employee last name. Okay, and that'll be it for those, and I'll save them. Actually, they're not saved. Okay, so in department, if I put in a department name like IT, okay, and then I will do a second department. What would we want it to be? HR. So in employees, and let's go into the data view. The employee last name would be, we would actually want to add one more thing here, right? So let's go back to design. Because I also need the department key. And it should be number. save that again. Go back to here. So I'll do me, and I'm in department 1. That's basically, it's referring back to department. Is there a way to display these side by side?
The databases?
No, the 2 tables.
I mean, design view.
Rows,
What?
rows.
Well, this is the rows.
I know, but there should be rows in it.
Oh, you mean split screen?
Yeah, and tables. Go to,
Well, you could
Cool.
just go to design view.
I think it might be, well, I don't want to be in design view.
No.
Fields, database tools, external data, what I want, and I can probably, if I drag, I just want to show them side by side. I'm just going to do,
Tab out of the window.
that's what I was trying to do. So anyway, these 2 are in department, first department, which is IT, and this person is in the second department, which is HR. I mean, that's how it would look in the database. This is the foreign key. And I could declare it as a foreign
should
key.
go all the way across to it. Imagine if you make another heading, not employee, but underneath employee, where it says department, and click to add, you can make them all the way across. Imagine, you could do that.
Yeah, I'm not sure what that. I think it's just a
Make
view.
blank ones.
Yeah, I mean, it's not super important. It just would be nice if I could get it to look, if I could show the 2 tables side by side.
All right.
And there should be something with view. That's not what I want.
This is view under file.
Left hand side,
Where?
where it says file.
I don't see that.
File.
Oh,
Views
well,
underneath, no, views underneath it. No, go back arrow, view.
yeah, but that doesn't have,
Oh.
that only has data sheet and design.
Something called split form, but I'm not sure that's what we want.
No, I know what
That's
that
one
is.
point in one.
Yeah, it's not crucial. Let's go into the relationship tool real quickly. So there's the thing with relationships, and we can add our 2 tables. And this is the foreign key there, so it should close. I can drag over to there. And I will enforce create. I hate access. I have to close these both. All right. So that creates the primary key, foreign key. It uses, instead of the crowfoot, it uses the infinity sign and a 1. That's sort of the idea. And the only reason I did this was I wanted to show you what the data would look like in the actual table. You have the department name, you have the department key, and then in the employee, where it's the foreign key, you just repeat the number of the, you just repeat the key, the department key to make the connection. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So I was trying to give a visual of it because some people have trouble seeing it with just the headings sometimes. It might have been better off doing it with Excel, actually. All right, so that's what this basically means, is that each department can have many employees. the double line here, not that I don't care a whole lot about that actually for this at this stage, but what that means is that every department must have. I mean, every employee must have an department. This makes that required. You could change that. Again, I don't care a whole lot, but just to show you. If I were to, and then change, I forget, I never am sure what the end symbol is, one and only one. This would be 0 or 1, which means you could have a department with no, you could have an employee with no department. Or a department with no employees. I think that's actually the way it reads. But that isn't right, because that's actually what this says. So it'd have to be each employee. But you could have an employee with no department. So I am going to change that back to 1. Okay. All I really care about is one-to-many. I don't care about what these are called cardinalities. All I care about is one and many. I'm not too worried about the refinements of those. Does that make sense? The database doesn't enforce those refinements anyway. They're for the logical structure. You really can't do anything with them in the actual database. So is one-to-many sort of clear? As I said, 90% of your database tables will be one-to-many. Okay. There are complications that could arise here, and I'm just going to mention it. We'll deal with them later. What if an employee can work for more than one department? In fact, maybe we'll deal with that when we talk many-to-many. But first, let's talk one-to-one. All right, so there's one-to-many. Let me go back to text. This is a valid relationship. In fact, that's the most common. Another valid but much less common is one-to-one. So what do you think one-to-one would be? Any idea?
A unique key from another table being required in.
Well, so it's basically that for every record in one entity, there's exactly one record in another. Not one-to-many, but one-to-one. As I said, this doesn't happen very often. The one place where I can think of it that it does sometimes happen is, well, there's 2 places, but one of them's complicated to explain. The easiest one is where sometimes people will split aside the public information, say, about an employee from the private information about an employee. So for every employee in the public thing, there's exactly one record in the private that also corresponds with it. They tend to share the same key, right? The same employee key. So just for security reasons, you might have their pay schedule, their home address, their social security number. You might have that in a separate table that only HR can access, and then there's a public one that anyone can access. There are actually probably better ways to set up that security, but that's one instance where one-to-one might work. Another instance is kind of off of a program model where you might have, oh, I didn't even see. Oh. So where a program, you might have something like a vehicle table, or an example that a database guy that I know is fairly well known. He did boats. So you have a table that lists different kinds of boats, but there's 2 kinds of boats. There's powered and unpowered, right? And for all the powered boats have all this engine information that you don't need in the unpowered boats, and the unpowered, and vice versa. Right? This might have sail information, things like that. So all the boats are listed in both, but then there's a list of powered boats, which only shows only the powered So you don't have to have a lot of empty fields. And there's an unpowered one, so both table has everything. But it split it off so you don't have a lot of null fields in it, empty fields. Does that make sense? And that, again, that's extremely rare. It actually looks a little, when you do it like that, like inheritance. I don't want to spend a lot of time on one-to-one because you may never actually use it. It's a very, very rare relationship, but it is legal, it's valid. Does that make sense? And then this is the last one, and then we'll do some examples. This one is not, it's a valid in design, but it's not valid in a database. Many to many. Is there another one I didn't see? It'll be right by the door. As I said, eagle eyes. Yeah, I can't imagine. I didn't see it.
Yeah.
All right. So many to many would be what would happen here if we had one employee could be in more than one department, right? Many to many is basically each department can have many employees and each employee can be a part of many departments. All right. If you were to diagram that, basically what we would want to do, it's still on. Okay, so if I do this, I'm going to do set in table. This would be basically many to many where you have the crow's foot on both sides. And as I said, that's logically fine, but the database can't do it. It just, the computer cannot resolve that kind of relationship. It can't figure out what goes with what when you do that. So if you have a many-to-many relationship, what you have to do is you have to create a new entity. And this entity is called a linking table. And I'm just going to call it employee department. And there's a couple of ways you could do a key field to this. You could give it its own auto number, or you can do this, as I often do this. I create a composite key. These are both primary keys and foreign keys. You don't have, as I said, you don't have to do this. You could just give it an auto number. What this does is in combination, it says you never assign the same employee twice to the same department, right? Because the combination has to be unique. And the relationship between these is again 2 one-to-many. Shouldn't have deleted that.
Yeah, okay.
So to do the foreign key, you click on it to where you got the little selectors, right click, and then it says set foreign key. So you have to right click on the field. Yeah, I know it's a pain. And then you can do set foreign. There must be another way to do that.
With that table that you just created,
Yeah.
is that also called a cross table, or is that something different?
So you could call it a cross table. I
Okay.
call it a linking table, but a cross
Okay.
table makes sense there too.
Okay.
Unless you're thinking of cross joints, which is something else entirely.
Oh, okay. Maybe that's something else. Keep them separate.
I'm going to real quickly format that. I need to get into and in here and do, actually I want jumbo. I should try to set that. So the one side of this is, okay, so one employee can belong to many departments. I'm going to copy, paste. Okay, and one department can contain many employees. So let me zoom down so you can see that a little bit. Basically, what a linking table does is it allows a many-to-many relationship to be resolved into two one-to-many relationships. Does that make sense? Actually, if you remember nothing else about design, this is probably one of the key things. There's two hard parts to it. One is recognizing a many-to-many relationship. And then the next thing is knowing whenever you have a many-to-many relationship, you have to create a linking table. These linking tables often are nothing but numbers, right? It'll be an employee number and a department number, so that it wouldn't necessarily be, you know, when you look at the table, you probably couldn't read it directly. But the computer can use it to resolve the relationships. Computers can do one-to-many just fine, but many-to-many is too confusing. It's too vague for the computer. Are we okay so far? Okay. So there are only three kinds of relationships. One-to-many, which is 99% of what your things will be. One-to-one, which is very rare. And many-to-many, which is actually pretty common, but must always be resolved to a one-to-many. So let's do like a little database and kind of walk through how the design would go and how the tables would relate to each other. Does anybody have an idea for one? I do if you don't, but you might have a better idea.
For linkage?
What?
Did you repeat the question?
A little bit of a database to build together as an example.
So all the administrations in, I don't know, a department?
Well, we could. I mean, we could do like a job.
HR and such?
A what?
HR, administrative,
We could do. Part of me wants to do a little bit of a
records.
retail one. The reason I'm thinking that is that Vince's Vinyl is retail.
Oh, okay.
And there are a couple of things that would be good to show you. I guess we could. I mean, those are actually good ideas, but we could do. I was thinking a
Leasing,
restaurant.
maybe
We could do leasing.
maintenance and then apartments,
Well, yeah,
leasing office, and then, I don't know, there's not many departments.
we could.
Coffee shop.
Yeah, I was thinking a coffee shop or a bakery or something. I mean, yours are good, but they're actually more complicated than I want to get into right now, probably. I mean, those are good, as I said, they're good ideas. And actually, the apartment one we may do at some point.
Yeah.
But I think right now the coffee shop sounds good. What would we want for the coffee shop? What kind of entities do we want? I'm actually going to change my design
That's
to.
a really good question, because when I look at the coffee shop, are you asking the departments at a coffee shop?
Well, they don't necessarily have departments, but the things that a coffee shop would want to keep track of.
Employees,
So we probably want employees, right? Yes. We don't have to do the whole HR thing, but we still would want to know who's on the till and things
So
like that.
deposits and such,
Possibly, but I'm thinking about just like the
accounting.
daily business of it. So like point of sale more than the accounting.
Merchandise,
So merchandise or products, yes, definitely.
Want a transaction table as well?
transaction table?
Just to record the record of the
That's a good idea.
transactions.
So what kind of transactions? It's a very vague word.
Well, I basically like maybe that's where the POS is putting together the receipt data. So have, the
So the probably sale.
Sales, sure.
One of the things, transaction actually kind of makes sense as a word in there, but I would never use it as a table name because it's a reserved word.
Oh, is it?
Yes.
Okay, because I've had several POSs where they use that as, it was an access one and they had a transaction table.
Yeah, so you probably could get away with it, but in databases, relational databases, a transaction is a grouped, it's actually a concrete programming term for a grouped set of actions. So all the actions have to occur or none of them occur kind of thing. So transaction, yeah.
Supplies.
You might, yeah, so we got products and supplies. We do want something with the transaction too. I'll add the supplies. Supplies or inventory, would you want it? Which do you prefer, supplies, inventory?
It sounds more.
Yeah, do they consider it inventory when you're just keeping track of flour and coffee?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes, they do as a former restaurant owner.
So let's bring in also, so you said transactions, mostly we're talking about sales, right?
I guess something that would just record the sales data.
Yeah,
The credit card information, MasterCard, Visas, Discover,
right.
checks or monies.
So one of the things in sales, I'll just put that as an attribute, is payment type.
Returns as well, necessary.
Would there be
I think-
returns in a coffee?
Oh, I guess not.
Occasionally,
I guess if you buy
occasionally you
cups,
void it for a,
Yeah,
but
I
not,
don't know.
you don't do a return as
I
such. You can void it, say,
I'm just thinking of retail, I suppose.
Yeah.
Not just go to the coffee shop. But,
I'm going to show you something. One of the reasons I wanted to do retail is that you always have to break your sale or transaction table into at least sales and sale details. We'll fill these in a little bit in a moment.
so it's inventory and sales, so what about food? So dairy and.
I would put those in, and that to me the coffee shop would be that would
You
be the
might
inventory.
have an inventory type.
Well, so in it, we haven't actually put any attributes in these. I guess we could put some attributes. So all of these will have like a key. So one of the thing would be, do we want inventory item?
Well, you want a name for it and you want to.
Right, but we could name it.
Item ID.
Well, we've got a key.
I mean, you could have an order SKU for reordering of that inventory.
A lot of those don't have SKUs.
No?
No. Because your vendors organize things differently than in retail.
Actually, it's really complicated because you don't know what you're using. There's a lot of loss. Inventory, I'll put category. So I'm going to add an attribute. So we'd probably want the, so the inventory is weird in terms of pricing, and that's where your accounting comes in. I'm not even sure how you would do the price in this.
Quantity, cost per quantity.
Yeah, okay, but cost changes.
Yes, you have to be able to change that as your vendors update.
But that's actually an invalid accounting. So there's two ways to do it. I'm not worried about this too much, but there's last in, first out, and then there's another one that's kind of like queues. But generally you have to average the price because the stuff that went in first is probably priced differently than the stuff that came in last. And unless you keep everything as a separate unit, which doesn't make sense, you have to kind of average the price across them.
It's kind of difficult to do that because you can't predict when they're going to change it or what they're going to change.
Right, but that's how they do it as an accounting. Because it doesn't, you don't know actually when you're buying in quantity and stuff. You often don't know what any individual item costs. But we'll just put cost per unit. The other thing you probably want, well, seeing again, dates don't. You want a date, I mean, these things perish fairly quickly. But you'll have some newer and some older.
A lot of small places don't
Build up
necessarily
much.
keep
Right,
dates
and with a
on
bakery
that.
or something like that, you're gonna have to replace your stuff regularly.
Yeah, you might write the date on the packaging as it comes in, just to keep track of your first in, first out, but
We'll keep it simple, because it can get really complicated. Let's do an employee key. Employee, I'm just gonna do employee name. And we'll assume that most of, maybe, do we want to put it like, let's just leave it at that. Products, product key, product name. You could also call this menu or something, but it'd include things like cookies, coffee, different coffees. If this is a coffee shop, any kind of pastries they have. If they sell sandwiches, yeah. And again, I'm going to keep it a little bit simple. So we might also want product type.
What about exports?
What do you mean exports?
This was your buying from other countries or other in the continental or foreign.
Well, maybe if you were Starbucks. I'm keeping it a little smaller than
Well,
that.
as well as
But don't they buy it through?
copies in continental.
But they buy it through local.
you still buy it through an importer, you don't import things yourself normally.
Right.
That
You
requires a
want
license.
documentation, though.
No, you're buying it from a vendor the same as anything else. The vendor
Vendor.
imports it.
Vendors.
So that's
New
probably yes. So product.
Thank you.
Why don't we pretend this is Deborah's cafe on a coffee shop on 15th Street? Little narrow.
Yeah, we can keep it small, but you still would have vendors, right? That you probably want to keep track of. I'm going to do, as I said, we're not necessarily going to do everything that would be involved here. And actually, in plurals up here, I usually do these as singulars, as a naming convention. Because at least as entities, it's really kind of a description of the process itself, the singular.
You want your inventory table to reference your vendor table.
Yeah, which we will do in a moment. I haven't done keys or foreign. I mean, doing keys, but I haven't done any foreign keys. Now, there'd be a whole lot of other stuff about vendors, like their address, and there might be a contact list for them and all sorts of things. And we could add that. One of the problems I hate with Visio, I'm running out of room.
Yeah, I think, yeah, more stock. Well, I imagine Starbucks has a stock and such, but I imagine you keep track of those as well. I imagine Starbucks has an HR department because they're a franchise as well as huge corporation.
Yeah.
Corporation.
So if we keep it small, so there's a couple of other tables that I would probably have in here. So we got vendor, product, employee, sale. We could add maybe vendor contacts. That actually leads us to something.
Is that like vendor name or
Well, so you might typically you don't deal directly with Cisco. So, for instance, you deal with a representative that comes by on a truck every other day or something, and if you need something, you contact them, and there might be more than one of them. For a particular company. So you rarely, at least, so my daughter runs a cafe in Eatonville. This is kind of what I'm doing. She used to run a bakery. Bakery made no money. Her cafe makes big money. So if you're ever going out there, it's hard to make money as a bakery. But I mean, she has people that come by weekly or monthly, that are representatives of the big company, and they'll say, "What do you need?" And she'll order a few tubs of this and that. So I would do like, so we'd probably have like the vendor key, and we'll start doing foreign keys in just a second, because a part of the point of this is to show relationships. Vendor contact name. And I might, we'll probably adjust this, and probably there'd be a phone and an email.
How did you get the foreign key box to show?
When you do it,
Key?
if I want to make this a foreign key, I have to select that, and then I have to right-click on it and do set foreign key. So you have to have the box selected, so it has the handles around it. Right-click on it, and then there's a thing that says set foreign key in the pop-up menu. Is there... I'm looking to see if there's somewhere else where you can set foreign key.
Would you be able to do one in your inventory? Because you would guess what your inventory is.
Right. I haven't done most of them, so let's do. I'm just thinking, let's fill out a little bit. We've got some fields. Let's finish out the sale, and I think that'll be good enough for right now. In real life, we'd probably be adding more tables and things to this. So the sale, I'm just going to do the sale key, which would be like the sale number, right? And then what we'll do is we'll talk through the relationships. This would be like the employee key. Here's something we haven't kept track of. Payment type we have. So probably the date. And we haven't made a customer thing. Would you want to keep track of customers at all? Coffee shops do, to some extent sometimes.
If you want to do something more complicated than a punch card, you can keep track of them that way.
Yeah, I don't know. I feel like most coffee shops, especially smaller ones, just do punch cards.
Just do punch cards,
Yeah.
so yeah. Okay, so we won't do that. So there won't be a customer name on the sale. The sale details, I'm going to do a sale detail key. The way the sales usually work, and one reason I wanted to do a retail is to show you this. This is the top of your receipt. This is the line items of your receipt. Okay. So this would be like the product name. This would probably be quantity. You might have a thing here for, actually probably, let me move that. This would probably go up here for tip, because the tip would be on the wholesale, right? And sale tip or whatever, tip quantity. What else do we need here? Product and quantity. You might want to, if you ever discount things, you might want to discount. And then the thing that you would also want, what else would you do for a relationship here? And then we'll talk through this here in a moment. You've got sale details. What will connect them? Any idea?
You have a cell key in the cell.
So yeah, you should have a sale key in the sale details. And it would be a foreign key, right?
So the primary and the foreign have to be named exactly.
No, they actually don't. But I think it's a kind of a convention to name them the same. They don't have to be named the same, but it has to be kind of clear which goes with which. Because actually when you build a database, there's not going to be anything that says FK there. I'm going to get a relationship. And which would be the one side? Let me change the line again. What do you think would be the one side?
The cell.
The sale, right.
Because
You have one sale, but it could involve many products, right? Because you could sell them a coffee and a donut, and it might be several coffees, donut, whatever. So one sale could have several details. One sale, top of the receipt, this is the list of the items. You do not need to total it, right? Your tax, it's up to you if you want to record the tax in there, you could. You don't have to calculate the tax, but you might want to keep the tax percent in there. Because you can calculate it on the fly, right? And also, so basically the way you would do it is you do a query that finds all of the items for this sale and then totals them, sums them. And does whatever math you need to do with the quantity and things too. Does that make sense? Sale detail?
Could you tell me how, oh, okay.
The other thing that would be worth doing is probably going through and determining what is required. For instance, for employee would be foreign key, so we would want a relationship. I'm copying that. It's easier than reformatting it. One employee. And I need the other side. Could be involved in many sales. Wanted to link to the whole thing. There we go. Whoa, what did it do? I seem to have lost it altogether. No, I might have it twice. Why is it doing it over there?
Give you another page.
Yeah. As I said, these are squirrely and getting them to do. So does that make sense?
Mhm.
One employee can be part of many sales. One sale can have many details. One product, again, can be sold many times, right? So the product key down here, I said product name. This should be product key. Again, it needs to be, it is possible that the name could be the key, right? If you only have one kind of thing. So again, I would make it a foreign key. And one product could be part of many sales. Another thing it does, it drives me nuts. Both of these are sharing the same end, which gets confusing.
Well, yeah, that doesn't make sense, because now if they're all linked together, it won't just link to the same one.
Yeah, they're linked to the same one, which is another thing that some people think that a table can only have one foreign key and it can have as many foreign keys as it needs. There are some tables that are nothing but foreign keys, right? What have we got? So we've got, so vendor should probably be linked to inventory. So we would probably want to add an attribute, and I'll post this. And I'm also going to give you a chance to work on something here in a moment so that it's not all talk. So I'm going to add the vendor key. And again, the vendor information can be much more complex because some of them have multiple addresses and they have different. So if I do this, foreign key. So the one side would go to vendor and the mini side would go to inventory. And it didn't. One side is gone here. I hate these. Nope, that's backwards. As I said, I truly sometimes hate these. And I went over to the side there. Vendor contacts, the idea is that a vendor could have multiple contacts. So again, that would be one vendor could have multiple contacts. Have we got any? I think we've got everything sort of connected. Let's look at this. I'm going to try, I don't know how well this will look on the screen, but we can maybe, I think I'll zoom first. And then I'm going to go up to view, presentation mode. Now, I don't know if I can get it all in the window if it's zoomed. But if I don't zoom it, it might be too small. Actually, let me change the zoomer.
I don't know if this was mentioned, but if you spill your design over the page border on the right, it'll extend it another page.
Yeah, it does. And you could draw these out. I mean, if you were to print this, you could print them on like a banner thing. But they are a bit of a pain. So I think we have everything. This is like really simple and leaving out a lot of stuff. But this is sort of the idea of what a relational design would look like. There's some things that are left out that I probably would. One of the things is we didn't determine which were required and which weren't. Right? So you could go through and you could, you know, probably employee name is required. The keys, you can turn them bold if you want, but keys are required by default. You can't have them empty. All of these would probably be required, tip except perhaps tip. You know, these would probably all be required except perhaps discount, because there's not always a discount, although you could just make it a 0 discount when there's no discount. And etc. You could go through and figure out. There's a couple of other things. We have inventory category and we have product category. It would probably not hurt to have a table that lists out what those categories are. It's called a lookup table, right? It isn't functioning as a part of the main structure of the database, but it's there to keep you consistent so that when you look up, so you don't write it in differently at different times. A common lookup table is like where they list all the 50 states, right? And so you choose the state rather than type it in. And it keeps it consistent how it's entered, so it's not 2 letters one place and the whole state name somewhere else. So we could have tables for inventory category and for product category. And as I said, vendors can be more complex, things like that. But does it make some sense? What doesn't make sense? Yeah.
The inventory vendor and vendor contacts,
Yeah.
We don't have any relationships. with
Oh, the
product.
inventory should be related to product. Thank you.
Okay.
That's actually good. You have good eyes. So I need to escape to get out of this view. You're right. There should be a relation. So a product name. Actually, how do we relate product to inventory? Because they don't necessarily have a direct relationship.
You can do
Product
inventory
is the same thing.
used, like ingredients.
Maybe.
Inventory is the same thing as product.
No,
No,
it's
it's not.
not. Not in a restaurant.
Not in a restaurant?
No.
So you have flour. That's a lot different than cake.
Yeah,
You
you
want
can
to
do,
separate the item.
Yeah.
yeah, you can do the ingredients.
Here you would have bread. Here you would have sandwiches.
I see, okay.
But that's actually a separate table because there's gonna be a lot of ingredients in it.
Yeah, I've actually done that as a. So if we were to do.
You actually want like a recipe.
Do inventory says products is a one, right? Of the single
Well, so
item.
actually, product has. So, say this was a ham and cheese sandwich. Over here, you would have bread, you would have ham, and you would have cheese. Right?
Should they be reflective? Because
Well, if you're doing something like like
one
Vince's
cup of
vinyl, they're
coffee to, 3 bags of that cup of coffee in inventory.
yeah, but 1 cup of coffee is still not a bag of coffee. I mean, I think that and it's different than the beans, right?
So it'd be like a many-to-many relationship.
It is. So you might, if you really wanted to resolve this, it's also possible that your inventory system would be entirely separate.
Really, practically it would be.
So you could just say that the inventory vendor, keeping track of inventory is a whole nother database. That's one way to deal with it. But if you wanted to relate these, you probably would need a intermediate entity. No room. Which would be like a product inventory.
I do it as essentially a ingredient.
Well, you could do it as an ingredient, although some things would come straight across, like a candy bar or something.
Yeah.
So what I would do, I'm not sure, and maybe I might, let's call it product inventory. I think I'm just going to give it this its own key. So you have the inventory key as a foreign key. And you would have product key as a foreign key. And then you would have something like quantity used or something. And I probably would do something, because this is all kind of weird, probably something like description, of what was going on. Just something to give you a little bit of room to add stuff that isn't, one-on-one. But you could do something like linking these. So I'm going to paste. And then I'll put this all up again. So I'm going to do product. Well, where did the other part of that go? This is the trouble with Zoom. Okay. Okay, so let's, I'm going to bring back the presentation mode. And it's a little weird. I might want to move this down a little bit because it's got everything kind of discombobulated. So this would theoretically let you figure out what parts of your inventory go into your products. It may, as I said, if it's like a packaged item, it may just be a one-to-one across. But if it's, you know, based on ingredients like bread or even a coffee. I mean, I drink my coffee black, but most people don't. So even if you're just having a coffee, it's not just coffee for most people. It's also syrup and milk, and it could be almond milk, or it could be, you know, skim milk, or it could be whole milk. You know, the ingredients into the average coffee is multiple. The details of this are not that important to me. They would be if you were making it for the coffee shop. But what I really want is, did the way that they're related and the way that this is constructed make sense? Yes, I see nods. I also see a lot of people kind of probably wanting their lunch. Okay, it's gonna, you know, we're gonna practice this a few times, and then there will also be when you build your own. And there's another step to this, which I don't think I'm going to introduce today, which is normalization, where you go through and make sure that you don't have any extra repetitions. That there are all sorts of different things that we can do to refine, and there's some refinements we could make even on this one. But it's, in general, this is fairly good. It would probably work. You probably would find fairly rapidly you need to gather a little bit more information about stuff. But. All right, so what I was thinking of, but we've only got like a half hour, 40 minutes, is that maybe you guys would want to just try, and you can work together or individually, and I'll just give you a few minutes, and then we can kind of debrief it. Just creating your own relationships, and I think just to talk about it, let's do something somewhat. I hope that equation was crucial to somebody. Let's talk about something you're fairly familiar with. So let's do a class, instructor, and assignments. And just do a relationship from that. Assume it's from the instructor's point of view. And the instructor can have multiple classes, and we could also include students. The student also obviously can have multiple classes. Right, so an instructor can have multiple classes, and a student also can have multiple classes. Just give it a shot. Just see how you would diagram that, and then we'll give it like 15 minutes, 20 minutes, and then we'll talk about it.
Is there an assignment that's due regarding this? Now, I was reading.
There will be.
There will be, and that's.
It's a group assignment.
Yeah, not final.
Yes, it's still vinyl.
Oh, okay. Okay.
So we came up with all the descriptions. The next thing we want to do is actually design the vinyl one. And I'm trying to give you some information about how to go about that. So one of the things that I will do is I will post this diagram. I'll post the bits that I have of the other stuff with maybe a little bit of commentary on the blog. And also there is the video, which I'm going to stop right now. If I can find it. Oh, I'm still in view. Yeah, you guys can work together. This isn't graded, but I really kind of want to just give you a moment to try it, and then we can talk about it.